I grew up in the countryside and have always loved nature, so much so that in 2016 I moved to my own small farm, turning it into the world's first carbon neutral honey farm. And in that time I've discovered plenty of ways to maximise small spaces. Over the next few weeks I can't wait to share some of those with you, along with plenty of other things that make me smile. From growing your own food and flowers to making every inch of space work to be better for the environment. If there are two things that being in a lockdown has taught us, it's this: when you run out of bread, you can bake your own. Baking and cooking from scratch is fun, can be healthier, and it tastes better too. And also, we're a creative lot, aren't we? We can learn to love our spaces even more. With a little bit of thought, you can transform even the smallest of areas to work for you. And I want to see just how much you can grow. Join me over the next few episodes where I'll teach you how to grow, save money, enjoy nature, and eat healthier by creating your very own tiny farm. In today's show, inspiration for turning forgotten spaces into usable spaces. I share my top 5 pollinator-friendly plants that are also useful in the house. What food to plant for the quickest and biggest returns. I share some of the things that made me smile on the farm this week. And I'll be showing you how to make the tastiest crumble with homegrown fruit. When you're farming, everything has to earn its keep because, managing land and animals and space is expensive. So you can adopt those money-saving techniques even in the tiniest of spaces. So no need to ever buy herbs again or fertilizer again for your garden or even sugar. I'm going to show you some really great space-saving but money-saving techniques as well. And this is the first one. It might seem something silly and something small, but the gravel here, there's a lot of gravel on the driveway here, and the gravel used to go right up against this wall. I never really thought anything about it, but then I realised that if I could drag the gravel away a little bit, and you might have a fence, you might have an edge of your garden, or perhaps thinking about small spaces even like right up to the edge of, I don't know, a balcony area or pots, which I'll come to in a second. So I grabbed the gravel, dragged it all away, and put a tiny bit of soil in there. And in here we planted dry loving plants. So there's some in here, a lot of these wildflowers, they don't need lots of soil. They'll go and find the sort of earth underneath, and they grow absolutely brilliantly here, creating a really nice habitat for the bugs. But also think about things that you plant into pots too. You put a tree in a pot or any type of plant. If there's any soil around the top, I like to plant in there too. Use up all of your spaces. Don't waste any space. Windowsills, if you get takeaways and you like your Chinese takeaway or your Indian food, when you get those Tupperware containers, rinse them out, put tiny little holes in the bottom, and those are wonderful reusable growing trays as well. So you can sow your own tomatoes, sow your own seeds and flowers indoors. But think about every little space that you've got. Windowsills, corners, ledges, balconies. Have a little hunt around your house. Have a little look at all the spaces that you've got and work out what you can put in those to maximise and capitalise every single space. And once you've done that, then you can look up a little bit and think about walls. Every single wall, fence, panel, side of your house, that can be grown up as well. So you can really maximise not only the floor space you've got, but also the height too. I've got loads of favourite plants that are bee friendly, and it's really difficult picking them, but over the next kind of few episodes I'm hopeful that I'm going to be able to whittle it down to just a few to share with you. The first one that is really useful both for bees and also inside your house as well is thyme. It's such an aromatic and fragrant and beautiful herb. This hasn't flowered just yet because we pick so much of it for cooking, but I tend to plant twice as much of everything that's bee friendly that also I know I'm going to want. I let half of it just go and let it flower and the bees can enjoy it, and then half of it I've sort of allocated for myself to pick as well. But of course you don't have to, you could eat it all if you want, or if you just want, plant loads of it and let it all for the bees. So it flowers and the bees will come and take the nectar from the thyme flowers. Thyme's a really useful herb. It's used in Mediterranean and also Eastern cooking as well. It's so fragrant. You literally just trim and cut the bits of stalk off, and you reverse strip the leaves like this. so that you end up with the stalk there, that goes in the compost, and then you end up with all these lovely aromatic leaves. And you can sow thyme seeds all year round. Don't buy it in an already made plant in the supermarket. There's just no need. You buy it in little seed packets. You can sow it all year round, pop it on the windowsill somewhere light and warm, make sure it's kept sort of relatively moist, not soaking wet, and that will grow continuously throughout the year. And as they grow, you can take those little shoots out, put them into a bigger pot, gradually bigger and bigger and bigger, and you end up with your own thyme plant. So that's thyme. Lavender is another great one. Probably the most famous of all the bee-loving plants is lavender. Again, wonderfully aromatic. And what I do is at the end of the season, just as the flowers are beginning to turn, I go and cut those flowers off, and then we tie them in bunches and hang them upside down, and they dry like this. And of course you can use them in your smalls drawer to make your smalls smell nice. You can use them in little pillow sachets. You can pull, again just like thyme, strip all of the flower seeds off like that, the little petals, little heads like that, put them in little bags and use them to help you sleep. Got wonderful sleep and calming properties. But also you can use the lavender in cooking. Tastes amazing in chili con carne, tastes amazing with chocolate. It's also really beautiful with honey as well. Lavender and honey biscuits, oh my gosh, straight away to my heart there. If anybody's watching, send those in. Then of course there's Phacelia. And Phacelia is one of the bees' most favourite plants. It's a great green crop manure. And by that what we mean is you can not let it flower. It's got loads and loads of nutrients inside it, and then dig it in. But I let all of ours flower. The bees go absolutely wild for it. And then it's got beautiful purple flowers, sort of wiry flowers. Then this is comfrey. Okay, this is so difficult to pick just 5, right? But I've challenged myself, otherwise it's going to become some great big long episode about plants. And all of these things can be grown in really unusual places. You find tiny, tiny spaces. Thyme doesn't need lots of space. And also it can be planted in gravel too. So if you've got, I don't know, edges to a driveway, or little gaps and crevices in your block paving, or perhaps there's a crack in your concrete or something, they can all be planted in there. That's an old wall, or just put them in a planter like this. This here is hyssop in the planter. That's another plant that bees really, really love. So instead of using, just leaving the table like this, I'm always trying to fill it with spaces. So back to comfrey, sorry. Comfrey is wild, smells sort of fairly non-offensive. It's not really a hugely fragrant plant, but the leaves are full of nutrients. So the bees absolutely love the flowers. This is quite an unusual purple variation of comfrey. It is wild, it's a wild plant. This one's cultivated, but you can pick the leaves. Maybe take sort of 10 leaves or so, 20 leaves or so. Hey, what are you doing? Are you going to come and say hello? Come on. Marley's here. Oh, it's just the ball. He only wants the ball. All right. So well, I'm busy talking about comfrey, so you're going to have to wait. So the bees will pollinate the comfrey, get greatness from that. And if you take about 10 leaves of comfrey, just pick them straight off like this, nice and close to the end here, as neatly as you can so you don't destroy the plant, and then put those straight into a watering can, sort of 6-litre watering can, and leave them for a sort of week or so. The leaves will begin to degrade in the water and excrete all of the goodness, and you end up with free fertiliser. So amazing plant for the bees, and amazing plant for your garden as well. That's comfrey. That's really, really good. And then the last one for today, just for today, because I know this is going to go on, is borage. And borage is, of course, most famously known for pims, I suppose, and also edible flowers. It's called the star flower. Each one of these tiny little blue flowers starts as this furry little bud like this. They're super cute. And then they pop open. But each flower only lasts 24 hours. And the bees go absolutely wild for this. They absolutely adore borage. And what you can do is very gently take these blue sort of petals off, and that is completely edible. And it's fragrant and slightly sweet. Freeze it inside ice cubes if you want. Add it to drinks, add it to a gin and tonic. It's absolutely brilliant. So there are my 5. That was really difficult. Top 5 pollinator plants for small spaces, but maximum impact. So for tiny spaces, it's a really good idea to try and maximise the sorts of things that you're going to grow. And there are a number of things that are my favourites. We're in my most favourite space. I love the greenhouse. Don't tell everybody else, but if nobody can find me, I'm normally hiding in here. Not with you, but you're welcome. So there's 3 things I think are really good to get the most out of the space. The first one is cucumbers. Cucumbers come in tiny little sort of oval seeds. You have to be a little careful with cucumber seeds because they do rot if you just put them straight down into the soil and keep them too damp. So the little secret here is to put the cucumber seeds sideways on rather than straight down, and then keep it damp but not soaking wet. And you can see here both of those. I always put 2 seeds in every pot just to make sure, and both of those have germinated, and they will grow. And oh, look at that, both of those are germinated. Oh, three of those are germinated. I got a little bit carried away there, I'm sorry about that, but you know, maximize your space, and both of those have germinated as well. So, but don't worry if they don't, just put some more in. But they will grow really tall. They'll need staking, and I've done that here with the tomatoes. So as they grow up, you just put a stake in like that, and these can be grown indoors. You don't have to grow them outside. If you've got a corner of your kitchen that's light and airy, if you've got, I don't know, a particularly tall windowsill or something like that, all of these plants can go in there. Don't be fooled into thinking you need this massive amounts of space. And same with tomatoes as well. They grow and they grow and they grow, and they crop prolifically, right? You'll get loads and loads of tomatoes from them, loads and loads of cucumbers. They do need lots of water. They're very hungry plants. But the lovely thing about it is you can use all of these gluts. So don't worry. People often say, oh, I've got all these tomatoes, I've got tomatoes coming out my ears. I've never actually seen that medically, but I'm sure it's a real thing. Well, I've got too many cucumbers. You can never have enough of them, because what you can do, of course, is you can slice them up, you can put them into ice cubes, you could freeze them, you can make stews out of the tomatoes, you can roast tomatoes. It's one of my favourite things, even if they're not ripe, even if they're a little bit green. Chop them up, roast them with some olive oil, a bit of salt. It's absolutely gorgeous. You know, put them in a jar with some oil, use them on your sandwiches. When I stopped eating dairy, I found that sandwiches were a bit dry because there was no butter on it, so I used to drizzle over sort of flavoured oil, and it was absolutely delicious. So those are two of probably my absolute favourites. Don't be fooled into thinking that they need pollinating. Tomatoes do need pollinating to get lots and lots of tomatoes, and nice beefy ones, big ones, but they grow happily inside. As they start to grow, come down here, what you'll see is that you'll end up with little bits of flowers, and the flowers are going to become the tomato itself, the fruit. So if you tap those, if these are indoors, and you can encourage them to be pollinated, what happens is the pollen sort of falls around a little bit. You won't get the same sort of tomatoes as you would do if they're outside being pollinated by bumblebees, but you still get them. Now, earlier on, I was talking to you about thyme, and this is exactly what happens. So this is a box, and you can make this yourself. You know, 4 bits of wood and a wooden base, or of course, like I said before, you can get, you know, punnets from strawberries or fruit if you buy it in the supermarket. They've got holes in the bottom, any plastic holes, plastic tubs with holes in. Put them in yourself. A little bit of compost. This is quite important that it's seed compost. It's very fine, and then you scatter the seeds in, cover it over, and keep it damp. You can see here it's it's watered sort of every other day, I suppose, like that. You don't need space. You can put them on your windowsill or next to a radiator, and you can see here the little seedlings starting to germinate. And I do this all year round because I use a lot of time. And then when the seedlings grow, these are peppers, but when the thyme seedlings grow just a little bit bigger than this, you can very gently lift these out. I use a blunt butter knife or a little pen, and then you can pop them into a smaller pot, and then they'll continue to grow. Obviously not like this. This is a tomato plant, but then it'll grow into a full-size bush. And so those are my sort of top 3, I think, for using and storing in the kitchen. You can freeze them, you can chop them up, you can blend them, of course. Thyme and all those sorts of herbs, if you've got loads of them, pick them, get rid of it, right? So pick, chop them in one go, freeze them. Chop them or dry them, chop them in, put them into stews, or make a pesto or a salsa or something like that. You can use all of them, there's never any waste. Capitalise all the space you've got, don't waste the space. There are a number of things that have made me smile this week, and the first thing is the bees, because this time of the year the pollen is beginning to really come in, and seeing pollen come into a beehive is just so, honestly, it makes me smile so much, because if the pollen's coming in, it means the colony is really healthy, because the pollen is being used to feed the baby bees. So seeing those great big heavy pollen sacs going in, that made me smile. And then the other thing that made me smile is me, because of this. This is cow parsley, which some people think is a weed, but what's a weed, right? It's only a weed if you think it's a weed. And before, only a couple of years ago, this would have all been trimmed and weeded and picked and been all beautiful, and then I realised, you know what, Jez, relax, man. Just relax, like let nature come in. And this, for me, softens the edges. It's only a weed if we think it's a weed. For me, this is free flowers. It's free movement, like when the wind blows and stuff, you get this lovely movement like this. It sort of softens the edges, makes it sort of feels like some of the wilderness is coming in. And if you want the grass, there's a lawn here, you can kind of keep it in check a little, but it's brilliant forage as well for pollinators. So I have to say, it was me that made me smile probably the most this much. I thought, yeah, look how much I've changed, that now I'm quite happy to have nature just doing its thing in the garden. So I promised you Crumble. Oh, I love crumble all year round. But the wonderful thing about this particular crumble recipe is it's great for one person, because I always find you make a massive crumble and you know, you're kind of eating it day after day after day. No big thing with that. But sometimes it's nice just to have an individual portion, or if you've got guests, or if you've only got small amounts of food but you still fancy crumble. And I've come across this amazing crumble recipe, so we're going to make it real quick here. But one of the most amazing things about growing your own food and about maximizing tiny spaces, that you get to enjoy the produce, you know, whether it be herbs or fruit or vegetables. So I've got here some rhubarb, and it looks tiny because these are just little bits of rhubarb that come off. I fancied rhubarb today, so why not? You know, you can let them grow thicker if you want. So this is going to be a really quick rhubarb and honey crumble. So you need for this 3.5 tablespoons of flour. So just grab your tablespoons, chuck them in there. I use plain flour, and some butter, and we're going to mix it all in this little bowl here. There's about 2 tablespoons of melted butter in there, so that all goes in there, and you mix the melted butter in with the flour, like that. Yummy, yummy, yummy. And you get a fork or a spoon, and you really quickly kind of mash this up. Really quickly wing it around like that. I find a fork sometimes is better. It's going to get a little bit noisy because you can sort of break it up into a sort of paste like this. See that? There it is, like that. And then into that you can add a little bit of demerara sugar if you want. Now there's 2 tablespoons of sugar in here for you. It's a sort of classic crumble sort of recipe. I'm a big fan actually of replacing sugar with honey. So I'm going to make it this version for you so you can see, and you give all that a good mix. And again, chop it all up. This is where a fork or a knife comes in handy, but naturally, because I'm brilliantly prepared, that's not what we've got here. So there it is. And if you are going to replace it with honey, you just use a little bit less in this case. You get that lovely kind of crumbly, there it is, look. And it's so simple because you don't have to do all that kind of thumbing around with the flour and the butter like you normally have to. And then also into there, I add some oats, but you could add nuts as well. So some chopped nuts, pecans, or almonds are very nice in this as well. Normally about a tablespoon and a half of oats or the nuts. They go in there as well. Lovely. And again, last little choppy up like that. You could bundle it all in together, I suppose. I've never really done that, but and you end up with this sort of strudely kind of crumbly topping, but all done really simply, like in one tiny little bowl. Great for one or for individual crumbles. Here comes the really cool bit. So you need an oven-proof dish. Any brand non-specific French dish is good. And whatever you got really to fill this, you know, you could put raspberries in it, you could put blackberries in it, little chop an apple up from your apple tree. Here we've got some rhubarb, left from rhubarb. There's not a huge amount in there, but that doesn't matter. That'll be absolutely fine for me. And then you want to get raw British honey. Now I know I'm going to use all of this, so I'm going to use this dirty spoon to go in here. And a good healthy, oh look at that, that is absolutely amazing. This is set honey, oilseed rape honey. That's going to go in there. Oh, look at that. Amazing. So that just stays there. That's going to melt, stew and sweeten that rhubarb. This goes on top. Let's get this back in here. Straight on top of there like that. You can make as much mess as you want. If my mother's watching this, she'll be like, well, that's typical. At least he does it in his own house as well as around mine. Give that a little press down like that, a little firm down. Oh, doesn't that look amazing already? Absolutely delicious. And that goes in the oven, 180 degrees Celsius, with the fan on. Fan in the oven, that is, unless it's hot in your kitchen, in which case pop the fan on as well, for about 30 minutes till it's nice and golden brown, and then you can tuck in. Isn't that amazing? Super quick and super easy. And that for me is the most wonderful thing about having a tiny farm. Tiny spaces that you can grow and create joy that taste amazing as well. Absolutely delicious. Well, that's it for this week. Join me next time Oh, that is amazing. To learn how nature can wash your clothes for free. It's all going on down here at the tiny farm. I'll see you then. That is amazing. Delicious.